What is up, everyone? It's Bob Freeman here with my friend Krish from UGA, the CEO of onlychads. And today we're going to
Yeah.
be talking about Bitcoin. Krish knows a lot more than I do about Bitcoin, and he knows a lot more than I do about a lot of other things as well. But today we're talking about Bitcoin. And what the heck is it? So, Krish, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit more in depth than I did, go ahead, feel free.
Yeah, so I'm Krish. I am the Chad Executive Officer at OnlyChads. OnlyChad sells Chad NFTs. So if you're a real Chad, you go ahead and buy a Chad NFT. And then my background in crypto is that I've been in the crypto space since 2014. I actually read about it in the Wall Street Journal, surprisingly. Wall Street Journal is very anti-crypto, but 7 years ago, they're like, yes, crypto is cool. But I read about it there, and I started mining crypto back in 2014. My first coin was Dash. And I've just been doing kind of random stuff on the side with crypto for the past couple of years. I've been to a few conferences, meetups in Atlanta. I've studied a little bit of the technical side of crypto, but yeah, just dabbled with it for fun for quite some time.
That's awesome. I learned some about your background with that as well. So that's interesting. That's interesting. That's awesome. So we'll go ahead and get this started with just we're gonna go over how the heck Bitcoin works, and then we're gonna do a Q&A for you where people can ask you any questions they want about your company, your NFTs, or just anything else any other general questions they might have.
Cool, Dan. Yeah, so let's get started.
Yeah. First question. Let's see. Like how exactly was Bitcoin invented just originally, and then why? How did they create it, and then why did they create it?
Okay, so Bitcoin was created, I think, 2009. I get confused because 2008 is when they published the white paper. I think 2009 is when they created it. It's created by an entity known as Satoshi Nakamoto. This could be a person, it could be many people. We really don't know what it is. But at least from my perspective, I think it was just basically like a dude who was messing around, who's like a cryptographer. He's like, hey, I think I can make this coin that requires no governments whatsoever. So they put it together and they call it Bitcoin, is kind of what happened. And then, so what you have Bitcoin basically in history is that 2008 they published the Bitcoin white paper, which is like a very high level overview of how Bitcoin works. It's like, okay, we can create a blockchain, and that allows us to create a cryptocurrency, a currency that is controlled by its users rather than the central bank or a central entity. And Bitcoin was based off of Hashcash, or had some similarities to Hashcash, I think, which was a product by this other cryptographer known as, I think, Adam Back. I could be wrong about it, but I think it's Adam Back, and he made Hashcash. And the guy who created Bitcoin, we're going to call him Satoshi, based this new Bitcoin project off of Hashcash. It's like, okay, this guy 10, 15 years ago created this other cryptocurrency like me 10 years ago, and I'm going to make my own new currency that expands upon this previous project and adds a lot of new features to it. And eventually you got Bitcoin per se. And then Satoshi's like, hey, I made this system called Bitcoin where you could create a decentralized, well, actually, proper currency distributed network of users who run the network, and transactions are made secure through a process called mining. He went and told a few cryptographers and stuff that, like, hey, this thing exists, and you got a small community from it. So, wow. To me, at least, it was like some dude's small project that kind of ended up working.
Yeah, that's interesting. That there's like a predecessor of Bitcoin that I guess most people probably don't know about. That there is something Bitcoin was sort of based off of, they're not the same thing, but that it kind of evolved from something else that was never really thought of as something that significant.
Yeah, most people don't really know what Hashcash is. I think it's like, from my best understanding, it's like, basically this dude created this currency or a system that you could send emails. Basically, back in the 1990s, you had a huge issue with email spam, right? So, you can send as many emails as you want. This dude is like, why don't we make people kind of pay for emails, or I think put a transactional cost to it to reduce spam. So through cryptography, you managed to get a system like that done. Okay. And then with Bitcoin itself, I think, we'll go into this later, but all the technology Bitcoin uses already existed. It's not like anything new was made. It's just putting together stuff that already exists, and voila, Bitcoin.
Yeah, but that is interesting how it was made. Like I can see it was just someone who is into cryptography, like into math and stuff, and was probably just messing around and maybe came up with that idea in the shower or just late at night or something and thought, you know what, like that'd be crazy. I'm just gonna make that. They probably thought a little bit further out and just thought like, wow, I should just make it and like just so it's there.
Yeah, I think that's what happened. He just made something. They're probably thinking about it. It's like most of the guys who do this are like, PhDs at Stanford and Caltech. So these are like, freaking like S tier smart kind of guys. Like Adam Back, he's like a professor at some university. All the guys that do this are like very famous in their fields, at least the cryptography field. But yeah, I think it's just some random side project, like you said. Dude thought about it. Showered. It's like, hey, why don't I make crypto? Why don't I make a currency?
Yeah.
And then I make it. Then it eventually blows up. So
it's wild. Yeah. Just could have been anyone. I wish we knew who it was, or what entity it was. What makes Bitcoin different from like other kinds of online currencies? Like what's different from like say like Bitcoins versus V-Bucks, the currency in like Fortnite? What makes them different?
Well, I think the core thing that makes Bitcoin special versus like V-Bucks is that, okay, so V-Bucks is controlled by a central entity, okay? So what's it? Epic Games? Epic Games makes V-Bucks. They can make as many V-Bucks as they want. They choose how many V-Bucks there are. Epic Games is the sole authority on how V-Bucks works, right?
Yeah.
That's V-Bucks. This is the same thing that Facebook has. So Facebook they've had random coins and stuff a while ago for paying for games. Clash of Clans Gem, Supercell makes it. A Clash of Clans Gem is fundamentally no different than what the Federal Reserve does. Like, Federal Reserve has some more bonus things with loans and stuff, but Federal Reserve is like, hey, we're making $100 million and we're releasing it to the public. And Clash of Clans is like, you can get 100 gems if you give us $10. Like, functionally speaking, the same thing. You have one entity that controls how many of these coins are produced and who gets them. While, on the other hand, with Bitcoin is controlled by its network of users. So Bitcoin has 10,000 node operators. These are essentially individuals who maintain the Bitcoin blockchain, process Bitcoin transactions, and record Bitcoin transactions. And these individuals have a say in how these transactions are processed. I think, what makes a Bitcoin transaction? Okay, so what conditions need to be met for me to send one Bitcoin to you?
Yeah, could you give us like an entire walkthrough throughout like through a Bitcoin transaction of like you going and buying the Bitcoin and then you giving the Bitcoin to someone else? Like how could you kind of walk us through how that transaction would work?
Okay, so where do you want to start? Do you want to start like how you buy a Bitcoin or how it's made on the Bitcoin network? Because those are fundamentally two different things.
Well, I also want to ask you like what is Bitcoin mining and how that works separately. And I think that might go more with like how Bitcoin is put into the ecosystem.
Let me grab a pen because I want to do a little bit of drawing.
But they do kind of go hand in hand. So if you'd rather just explain Bitcoin mining and the process of doing a Bitcoin transaction together, that's totally fine.
So Bitcoin transaction, I'm probably going to draw on a sheet of paper, so I probably make this make sense.
Go ahead.
So transaction,
it's
essentially
complicated.
Best way to look at it is that okay, what's a good way of putting this? Okay, so you're basically sending. You know how on a check you can sign a message, right, with a signature.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I have $100, and I write a signature down, and I say that, okay, I'm sending the $100 to somebody else. And with that signature, you can uniquely prove that you're the one who sent that $100, right? With the digital signature, with the signature, hand signature. So there's this concept of digital signatures. And a digital signature, you can have a piece of numbers and letters and strings. Like, I don't know, it's like cat, dog, alpha, wolf, or something stupid like that. But with that string of letters and whatever data it is, you can digitally sign a message and prove that that it's related to that unique string of numbers and letters, right? This is going to get a little bit confusing. So in Bitcoin, you have a concept of a private key. So a private key is your secret thing of numbers, letters, and strings that control access to your wallet or your funds. And with that private key, you can sign a message. You can digitally sign it. And when you digitally sign something, you can uniquely say that, okay, I signed this string of data that says, I don't know, my name is Krish Angra, with that string of special numbers and letters. And you can uniquely prove that that message comes from that piece of data. It's kind of confusing.
I think a good way to describe like a private key would be almost like a combination of your username and your password.
Yeah.
But it's just a string of almost random characters that's like 200, 500 characters long that you use as your username and password, and it's just unique to you, and only you have it.
Yeah. It's unique to you. I think that's a simple say. Something that's unique to you. And then through cryptography, you can prove that, using that, you can uniquely prove that you're doing something. I can sign a message saying, with that string of data, that I'm sending $100 to you, right? I'm saying, I want to give Bob Freeman 2,000 Bitcoins. And with that string of data, I can sign a message that I'm sending it to you. Kind of like with a check, I'll just put my signature. Instead, with Bitcoin, I'll use that string of data and say I'm sending 2,000 Bitcoins to you. So through that process of basically having like, you can prove that you yourself is sending money through cryptography. It's kind of weird, but you can kind of say that me, myself, is sending money to you. You can essentially prove, you can essentially send and write transactions yourself using these digital signatures. It's like, okay, I'm sending $1,000 to Bob Freeman. I'll sign a message, and it gets sent to, and people say like, hey, yeah, Chris is sending the money, just as now you're doing it online and send it on paper.
And
so you have.
And it's a lot of the difference with that and doing a banking transaction online would be that you're actually the person executing the transaction, versus where if you're doing it on Venmo, it's just you're sending a signal that's giving a message to an algorithm to like notify your bank to move money from one place to another. Whereas with crypto, or not send a message to the blockchain, but just to to create a message that you are sending coin from one place to another place, and it's recorded on that blockchain as being transferred.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. It's like, I think with Venmo initiates a transaction, right? They're like, okay, I'm going to say I'm going to give $5 from Chris to John. And because I am Venmo and I'm special, I can say I can do that. While with the Bitcoin transaction, with your private key, is like, I am initiating the transaction. That's kind of the key difference, is that you yourself, with the private key in the Bitcoin system, you yourself are the only one initiating the transaction. So, while Venmo, on the other hand, is initiating it. So that gives you a lot of control over your own funds. Because previously with all online technology, let's say you use PayPal. PayPal is the one saying when a transaction is done or not, right? Well, with Bitcoin, you're the only one who can say when a transaction is done or not. And that is a massive difference. Like, if you've ever tried to, like, sell shit with PayPal, PayPal's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Like, it's like you send money and PayPal's like, oh, I don't like it. And they'll just reject the transaction, you know? Or it's like, oh, yeah, no, we're going to keep it there even though the other dude stole money from you. Like, PayPal does weird when selling stuff on eBay. It's a terrible platform.
Yeah, because,
like,
I mean,
a lot of these online systems.
Because it's a central authority. I mean, they get to make the ultimate decision, like, if the money is transferred, if you get to keep the money in your account, if you get to keep your account, those kinds of things, because it's centralized. I mean, PayPal is the authority, whereas with Bitcoin, the authority, so to say, is like millions. I don't know how many, but a large amount of computers all over the world that kind of just choose the transactions at random and don't really discriminate based on who the person is or what they're doing with the money or any particular rules that are.
Yeah, it's very different. I think it's like, I had a good example. I just missed it. Okay. What was I going to say?
We were talking about PayPal.
Something about, like, I think transactions. Oh, yeah, with subscriptions, that's a bad thing. You know how, like, let's say you have a credit card or something. You go sign up for Netflix or something, right? You cancel it, but all of a sudden they keep on charging your card, right? Because these other authorities have control over your payment, they can charge you and take transaction fees whenever they want. It's like I sign up for some random thing. I don't know. I sign up to get my lawn cleaned for $40 every month. Then I say I don't want it, but they'll just keep charging my card. It sucks ass, right? But Bitcoin, you yourself initiate that transaction.
Yeah, there's no way to set up like a reoccurring payment like that, I guess.
Oh, not at all.
Wow.
I think
I've never thought about that.
There are ways, but with the traditional Bitcoin transaction, there isn't.
Yeah,
that's the best way of putting it.
And there might be a way like just from your own end to set that up if you want to, but I guess like you could probably close it from your own end as well.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Bitcoin, you yourself do the transaction. Everything else, somebody else does it for you. So,
well, how exactly does the Bitcoin mining work? Because we talked about that a little bit, just a Bitcoin transaction, how it goes from point A to point B. The computers that authorize the message are Bitcoin mining devices.
Yeah.
Like how exactly do they do it? What do they do? Like why do we have to have millions of computers to process these transactions? Why can't it just go through a single wire?
So Bitcoin mining is actually it's a very complex topic. So I'll try to explain it as simply as possible. But essentially what you're doing in Bitcoin mining is, like you said, you have to secure and make information transaction secure, right? You got to keep the data secure. You got to make sure, okay, everybody in the world knows that I sent $100 to Bob, 100 Bitcoin to Bob Freeman. So you know how I was talking about how you can sign messages, right? So I sign a message that I am sending $100 to Bob Freeman, and I go tell everybody in the world that I'm sending $100 to Bob Freeman. What if one dude decides to just delete that, right? Just say, okay, that never existed. Because you could totally say that, like, okay, telling everybody in the world that I'm sending $100 to Bob Freeman. What if I decide to say, hey, it just doesn't happen, right? How do you prove that I said that message or didn't send that message, right? It's like, you can cryptographically prove I said it, but like somebody could delete it and it never happened, right? So if it never happened, I could hypothetically send that message again and spend the money twice. It's kind of weird to think of, but like, let's say I'm sending 100 Bitcoin to Bob Freeman. I delete that message, and then I say again, I'm sending 100 Bitcoin to Bob Freeman, right?
Yeah.
So you have a problem. It's called the double spend problem, where you can straight up say, hey, delete the transaction and go say I can send 100 Bitcoin again. Do you understand kind of what I'm saying? Or
yeah, I see what you're saying, but like the reason why there's so many different computers is that way they conscientiously have to validate it as a transaction, or else it doesn't really count. Like it has to have more than one confirmation on more than one different computer before it's considered a sent transaction. Like it has to have 3 or 4 different confirmations, right? Something like that.
Yeah, so the best way of looking at it is that why it's a blockchain is that why is it called a chain? So in the process of mining, you link all the transactions together. So like, okay, I say I'm sending 100 Bitcoin to Bob Freeman. The Bob Freeman said he's sending 100 Bitcoin to me. I say I'm sending 100 Bitcoin to Bob Freeman. So each transaction is essentially linked to each other with the data in it. It's kind of confusing, but like it's kind of like, I don't know. It's a chain. Like if I change the data in the first transaction, let's say I go ahead on my computer and edit the 50 Bitcoins, right? You can cryptographically tell from the later transaction that one doesn't line up.
Yeah, because the blockchain, it's a ledger, correct?
Yes. So you have this concept. This is going to get a bit technical here. It's called a Merkle root, okay? So I have transaction A, B, C, and D, right? And a Merkle root is one piece of data that kind of combines all those other pieces of data. So let's say a transaction A, B, C, and D. The word A, B, C, and D will kind of link everything together, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So if I change transaction A, that becomes transaction E. That will become E, B, C, and D, which is not the same as A, B, C, and D. You kind of get what I'm getting at? Like you have one piece of data or information to represent everything. Like, I don't know. You change one thing, your resultant product's going to change. Like if you're adding 1 plus 2, you change 1 to 3, you're going to get 5 instead of whatever originally was. So
I mean, it'll take like an input of like it'll load the total input of everything that's happened in the past before it makes any decisions on anything in the future. It loads all of the historical data of the blockchain, just so that way it knows everything's lining up correctly in the transactions, and no one's making any transactions that are out of balance of what they actually have.
Yeah, that's kind of a good way of saying it. Like the blockchain kind of at least has all the previous data. You know, you mess up some of that previous stuff, someone's gonna say, "Hey, there's something wrong with that. That doesn't count." You know, so that's kind of one way of putting one of its major functions is that like just checking up if something is wrong in the previous set.
Yeah.
So that's what miners are doing to some extent, and then the actual process, I think this might be a bit much to explain, but I'm not going to get into it. But it's a lot of cryptography and why it specifically works. But I think why you put that computing power down. So I think so when you add the mining factor in, you're basically, I don't know, like it's hard to say, but what's a good analogy? I think, you know, when you do a math problem, right? 2 + 2 × 5 × 6. That's going to take you 2 minutes to do, right?
Yeah.
So when you link everything together, the more complex you make the linkages with math, the longer it takes to put a final outcome. Does that kind of make sense? Okay,
and
let's say
is the
you have transaction 1, 2, and 3. You do a bunch of fancy math stuff to it, and that takes 30 minutes to process.
And is the reason for making them more difficult to process so that way they're not processed too quickly? Is that the reason, or what's the incentive behind making the algorithms for the mining computers require more computer power?
So the incentive is that it's a little bit tricky, but I think generally when you have more computing power involved, it makes it harder to change things. So let's say I want to change transaction 1. I don't know, I'm going to change it from, instead of saying giving 100 Bitcoin to Bob Freeman, I'm instead giving 69,420 million Bitcoin to Bob Freeman, okay? If I wanted to change that transaction, basically you're going to end up having to use more mining power to change every single, change every single other transaction down the line. So the more computing power you add, it makes it harder to change everything else later down the blockchain.
I see. Because like I've heard of what people call the 51% attack, where like if you had 51% of the computing power on the blockchain, you could do that. You could effectively reverse and cancel transactions and kind of make it into a central authority. And is that kind of some of the incentive behind increasing the computer power over time, so that way no one just comes out with a quantum computer and takes over the entire blockchain?
That is, I think, a huge factor is like that 51% attack. Because, like, let's say, I don't know, we're going to have to use US dollars for this to make a little bit of sense. Let's say 50 years ago, there's $1 billion worth of computers mining Bitcoin, right? So that means some dude could go along, maybe a government that doesn't like Bitcoin, buy $1 billion worth of computers, and go and attack the network by deleting transactions and messing around with the chain. However, if there's, I don't know, 50 or $100 billion worth of computers, full sending mining computers, that becomes a lot more expensive to attack the chain using a 51% attack like you described. So the more amount of miners or computers that are mining Bitcoin, the harder it is for one person to aggregate enough computers to attack the network.
It also make it less profitable for them to do it, because it'd be more startup cost if they want to take on that venture.
Oh yeah, I think it's like, I don't know how much the amount.
It'd be pretty expensive to do that.
Total value of miners right now, but I would say $50 to $100 billion. Like, if somebody wanted to attack the network by just making more Bitcoin mining hardware, they would have to be willing to spend $50 to $100 billion, which is a high price for most governments or most individuals at the moment. Like, we have a hard time convincing people to build a freaking sidewalk, right, in the United States. How the hell are we going to get people like, yeah, we're going to spend $50 billion worth of taxpayer money to buy Bitcoin mining hardware so we can kill the Bitcoin network?
So we can buy a bunch of computers.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. But there's other attack vectors.
Well, this kind of gets into like our next question. Like, what are the pros and cons of Bitcoin versus just, I mean, fiat currencies, but also other digital currencies as well? Like, what makes Bitcoin good? What makes Bitcoin bad?
Okay, so I would say the best thing about Bitcoin is that, like, it is very decentralized. Well, actually, there's constant issues with that. I'm not going to get into it. But for the most part, compared to almost all other cryptocurrencies, it's very decentralized. You don't really have too many individuals controlling it. I think it's one of the most free payment networks in the world. Like, aside from bartering gold with somebody else, at least for digital payment, Bitcoin is one of the most free means of transacting with other peoples. I don't think there's anything that really compares to it.
Is the concern about like China's Bitcoin mining farms having a large percentage of the total Bitcoin mining population? Is that a real concern, or is that just something the news talks about?
Oh, no, that's actually a huge concern, okay? So it's
okay.
not something the news talks about. Like, there haven't been any attack vectors with it yet, but imagine like in a democracy, okay? Bitcoin kind of works like a democracy. So, United States, you have 300 million people, right? And they all aggregate into different parties. You have your Democrats and then you have your Republicans, right? So that's kind of what a mining pool is. You have millions of different miners, but they aggregate into mining pools to kind of more evenly split rewards. The actual reason is a little bit more complex than that, but they have a tendency to aggregate into mining pools. And so what problem this creates is that, let's say you got 5 or 6 mining pools banded together. Now you have 50% of the network, and now you can attack the network. So what if somebody hacked these mining pools, got control of them, right? Let's say somebody hacked App Pool or F2 Pool, a couple other pools, got 51% of the network share, and now they have control of the network. It's a huge problem. Because once you have control of the network, you can start messing around with transactions, you can delete transactions, you can do illegal stuff to the Bitcoin network, which is very risky. And this has happened before. I think this is back in 2015 when I don't think Chinese pools had so much power. This is ghash.io, 2015. This pool is no longer active. I think their pool, they may have crossed over 51%. I'm not for sure, but they're very, very close. If some bad person got control of this mining pool, they would have control over the Bitcoin network. They could do whatever they want. So,
wow, that'd be. I hope that doesn't happen in the future. That would be frightening.
It would kill the price of it. I think what would have to happen is that the Bitcoin network would have to fork or split into two. Where they decide that, okay, they use something called an algorithm to process Bitcoin transactions. They can change the algorithm used to process Bitcoin transactions, so all the other miners, their computer hardware no longer works.
Yeah.
So that would be a way of averting a 51% attack, right? But like it would be absolute hell if that were to happen because transactions would be going crazy.
Yeah, just think it'd be
money
so
would be
chaotic.
sent, double spent. It's not a good situation. It will kill the price. Like the one appeal Bitcoin has is that it works. That means it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So.
Like, what would be like some more pros to it? Because we see that it is for now decentralized, but I mean, and in the foreseeable future probably will be, but still, like, it's a pro and a con because I mean, it has some weaknesses in its ability to be decentralized, but it's also like its decentralization is still a positive to it. Like, what would be some other positives?
Okay, so I think, like I said before, Bitcoin works. That is one of the most important things about Bitcoin. Bitcoin works. It's been around for 12 years. There have not been any major attacks. Bitcoin just works. Like, these other coins, like Ethereum, you have problems with it from time to time. You know, you have these other pump and dumps, rug pulls. You know, you name it with crypto, something dumb happens with one of these smaller coins where the coin doesn't work, it gets hacked, users lose money. Yeah. Bitcoin, at least its core blockchain, works. And it's like a rock. You know, there have not been any major issues, any major hacks, at least recently. And that's, I think, the biggest appeal of Bitcoin. It's the first one there, and it works as it should be. If I want to send money to you, Bob Freeman, $100, I could expect 10, 15 years from now that transaction would be perfectly normal. And that's the biggest appeal of Bitcoin.
Yeah, like it doesn't have like the bells and whistles of a lot of other altcoins, but it's it's solid and it's been around the longest and has worked as long as it's been around.
Yeah, because like let's say you look at Ethereum, back in 2016, this is what they did. So if you've heard about the DAO hack, somebody stole I think 10 million Ethereum. I don't know how much it was, but it was a few hundred million at the time, probably like 20 billion now in today's valuations. And you know what they did? They decided it's like, okay, guys, we're just gonna all the transactions that happened on that day, we're just gonna revert back a week beforehand. And they told everybody on the network to change their transaction history. So imagine like 2 or 3 days of transactions never happened because there was a big hack. Like that would never happen with Bitcoin.
That's crazy. I had no idea they did that. That's
They
insane.
did. They did. I think there's other coins. I'm not a whole expert on all these shit coins and stuff because it just takes too much time to learn.
Like people say with cryptocurrency, once it's sit, you can't get it back. But like, I guess like if you try really, really, really hard, you can.
If the fail is big enough on Ethereum, you can get your money back. That's the best way of putting it. If it's a big enough fail, like that was 10% of all ETH in circulation at the time. Like Ethereum developers were like, I think let's just give the money back. I think this is too big of a hack. Let's just go back to beforehand.
Wow.
That's not happening with Bitcoin. Not happening with Bitcoin.
Yeah, no way.
Yeah.
What are some ways like Bitcoin's improved since it came out?
Okay, what's the best way of putting it? Not much, but I'm the pro and a con because Bitcoin has not changed that much. The protocol is very stable. I think you've had a couple big changes. First of all, you had SegWit back in 2017. So that helps. I think there's 2 things. I think something like transaction malleability, where other people could change data in a transaction without telling you. I'm not exactly for sure what it all entails, but like imagine I say I'm sending 100 Bitcoin to Bob Freeman. Somebody could go ahead and edit it and change it to 99 Bitcoin. Like, it's not like, that's an example of transaction malleability where you can change data into transaction. But I don't think that was going on. There's some other like minor details in the transaction that people could change or there's issues with it. So SegWit fixed that. And I think it also, I'm not exactly for sure what mechanism it allowed this for, but it allows more transactions to be processed per day or something with how it saves data or utilizes data. SegWit transactions allow for more transactions to be processed. So
Okay. So like
that's a cool.
Really, like it hasn't improved as much as far as features go, but like they've really just been focusing on improving what they already have.
Yeah, kind of. I think that's it. Like there's like, okay, Bitcoin works. You can do a lot with Bitcoin. I think a lot of side solutions have been built. I think this is a cool thing to look at. So you had Counterparty back in 2014, and they allowed you to create different coins on Bitcoin. So like I could create Krish coin, and you could trade it on the Bitcoin blockchain. So you know how on Ethereum you can create your own token. I can say like, I don't know, Shiba Inu. That was the famous one, right? The Shiba token, $6 billion. You can create that on Ethereum blockchain. You could also do that with Bitcoin back in 2014 with Counterparty. So that was very cool. I think you had the Rare Pepe collection. That's entirely based off of Bitcoin. These were some of the first NFTs were actually built off of the Bitcoin blockchain. So you have a lot of different weird solutions which you can do with Bitcoin. And then you got your Lightning Network. So that was a big change. I think that came out 2 years ago, Bitcoin Lightning Network. So that's a side network. So the best way of putting it is that I go to Bob Freeman's store, okay? I buy lots of snacks from Bob Freeman's store. On Monday, I buy $10 worth of snacks. On Tuesday, I buy $20 worth of snacks. 2 weeks later, I buy $50 worth of snacks. Then I return $10 worth of snacks. So you have all those transactions, right? You'll just lump them into one with some type of payment channel between me and Bob Freeman. And at the end of the month, you'll just have one transaction that kind of aggregates everything. So it's like Krish bought $90 worth of snacks and returned $10 worth of snacks. So we're just going to say Krish sends $80 to Bob Freeman instead of using 6 different transactions. So that's one cool addition to the Bitcoin network was Lightning Network, which is your layer 2 solution.
Yeah, that is interesting. I would, wow. Yeah. Is there any way to like recover though the back and forth of the transactions, or would it only spit it out in one line?
I'm not an expert on how it works, but I think you have like settings or like parameters configured between me and you, and how much money you put in. Let's say how we usually do it is that like I'll fund 1 Bitcoin into the transaction, and then let's say I buy $10 worth of snacks, and then I'll give you whatever equivalent in Bitcoin, maybe zero point 0.1 Bitcoin to Bob Freeman, and then I return it and get that back, and then we can decide to settle at any point in time. So I think it's very flexible. I'm not an expert on the system, how Lightning works, but imagine it kind of like a tab at a bar. You can choose to close it out whenever you want. You can choose to fund it whenever you want. And so that's how it kind of works. For Bitcoin, instead of buying 6 drinks with 6 different transactions, you'll just have one summary transaction at the
end. Yeah, that's interesting. That really kind of opened my mind to how not only, like, I think a lot of people, when they focus on Bitcoin and its importance, they just look at Bitcoin itself and not necessarily the things that are built off of Bitcoin and how they rely on it and they need Bitcoin to exist, and how they're not really like I don't know. It's like in the same category. It's almost an altcoin, but not quite, if that makes sense. It's weird.
Oh, it is. Yeah, Bitcoin I think it's a question of branding, right? So like Ethereum's like branding is like, oh, you can do 69,000 different things with Ethereum. You can make your own coins. You can have multi-sig. 3 people send coins at once. Like Bitcoin never tried to brand like that. But okay, we can make as many coins as you want. You can do this. You can do that. Like people have found ways to develop it on Bitcoin though. So it's like Bitcoin has a lot of features that every single one of these other altcoins can do. But people aren't just that vocal about it or don't really understand that.
I think people just have a bias because of all the marketing for Ethereum, of just like Ethereum is the token you do everything with, and Bitcoin's the coin that you don't.
Yeah, it's a bit of a problem, I would say, because like there's a lot of cool solutions built off of Bitcoin. Like I had rare Pepes. Like these are basically one of your first NFT series. I think the first Pepes in that series are worth $20,000, as much as any famous Ethereum NFT, right? But people just don't know about it because they don't expect it to be happening with Bitcoin.
Yeah. Wow, that might not be a bad NFT investment.
But I own many rare Pepes, okay?
People haven't caught on to them yet.
Yeah, so old timers know about Pepe Cash, but not as many as your new people because it's not as hype. Ethereum is everything new, and NFTs are the newest thing on Ethereum. Like, no, Bitcoin can do a lot of things Ethereum does, and NFTs have existed for 7-8 years now. So, ironic. But what else you got? Oh, yeah. So this is from the technical reason why you can do whatever you want on Bitcoin. But Bitcoin, I think, remember how I said you can sign a message, right? You say you're doing something. I say I'm sending 100 Bitcoin to Bob Freeman. You can put whatever data you want in with a Bitcoin transaction. So, like, instead of saying I'm sending 100 Bitcoin to Bob Freeman, I could say I'm sending 100 rare Pepes to Bob Freeman, or I'm sending 100 Pepes to Bob Freeman, and I'm returning 50 to me. So you can do a lot of weird and fun stuff with the arbitrary data in a Bitcoin transaction that allows people to build other layers and applications onto it.
So using the same blockchain, people are able to send things other than Bitcoin.
You can. I think the counterparty layer was, pretty much one of the first layers on top of it, where you could send counterparty tokens. This is back 7 years ago. Counterparty tokens via Bitcoin. So I think I explained this before. It's like I'm sending 100 counterparty from me to Bob Freeman, and that's processed via the Bitcoin blockchain. So that was very cool.
Yeah. Wow.
It was very famous back in 2014. I think they burned, I don't know how much Bitcoin, but they probably $2 million worth of Bitcoin back then. Probably, I say 2 to 10,000 Bitcoin. See, proof of burn. So this is where I think this is where it comes from. Are you familiar with proof of burn?
No, not at all.
People burn coins. So the concept is that, like, okay, we're going to create 10,000 of these new counterparty tokens, right? And then in the process of doing that, we're going to burn or destroy 2,000 Bitcoin. So because we've destroyed that Bitcoin, we're going to assume this counterparty has value because you took a value out and now it's in this token is kind of weird, but
Yeah, it's like you. Yeah, I see how it works though. It's like you burnt the value, but the value has to go somewhere else, so you store it in like something else, I guess.
yeah, it's somewhere where no one can reach it. Wow. So it's like, well, we've destroyed its value, so therefore this thing has value.
Is there any way to burn it back?
No, it's gone. It's like, I think, so they sent it to a wallet address called Counterparty or something like that, like that no one owns. So it's gone.
That's insane.
That Bitcoin's gone.
Wow, I had no idea. Yeah. How do you think all this technology is going to evolve and like really change the world and change the way we do our day-to-day things and just change our day-to-day things that we own, the things that we do, things that we see?
Honestly, I have no clue. Like, I think this is the best thing about it. It's like, I think everybody tries to predict the future with crypto technology. It's like, oh, it's going to be the next big thing. Bitcoin's going to be it. Ethereum's going to be it. Really, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to happen. I can say it's going to be some type of blockchain because people like peer-to-peer transactions. You don't like having to deal with the middleman, right?
Yeah.
So there's going to be some sort of peer-to-peer transaction. If you go back to a stock exchange, right? I have to go through the New York Stock Exchange to trade a stock. From, let's say I'm buying one share of Apple, I have to go through the New York Stock Exchange to trade that. Why can't I just send that one stock from me to you, Bob Friedman, right? But you can do that with crypto technology. So that some way, shape, or form is going to be implemented, I think, no matter what. Peer-to-peer transactions. Like, I initiate the transaction, you receive it. We don't have this guy in the middle messing with it. Bitcoin, I don't know. Bitcoin has a lot of issues with it. You have very little transaction throughput, 200,000 transactions per day on the main chain, which is not much at all. You have other solutions like Lightning Network to help alleviate that, and there's a lot of other things people are working with. Additionally, you have a coin distribution problem. Like, Satoshi Nakamoto owns 1 million Bitcoin, or 5% of all Bitcoin in existence. You have one individual owning that much. That is incomparable to anything that's going on with the US dollar. There's no one person that owns 5% or 10% of the supply of all money.
Yeah.
Like, you have a bank that might do it, but not one person. And then let's say you have your original 10, 20 Bitcoin developers who they own a solid 10 to 20% of all Bitcoin in existence. Like, if they were to dump or move their Bitcoin, the market would go crazy. Like, that's just kind of like a weird existential crisis. Like, yes, we have these people that we don't know who they are, but they do own 20% of all the money in existence. Like, it's...
Yeah, why don't they just wake up one day and cash out?
They could. So it's...
That is a threat. Like, that is an unusual risk that really, like, nothing else has. Well, yeah. I don't know. I guess there's some stocks that, I mean, that could happen with, and I guess that could happen with some commodities too, but it's just not really the same.
Yeah, you don't have it with currencies because people just keep printing more. So it's like, I can see when people have issues, like, why does this random dude have it? Like, you can see why central governments would be mad about it, but...
Yeah. But, like, I could see, like, with a stock, say someone owns the majority of a company, then they dump it. Or, like, with a commodity, like, if China dumps a bunch of raw steel or raw iron on the United States, that would ruin the prices of steel or the prices of iron. But, yeah, I guess with currencies versus cryptocurrencies, that is a real risk that cryptocurrencies have that normal currencies don't.
Yeah, it's like they give all the money to developers, like, let's say Ethereum. It's like, oh, here's the developer stash, here's our founder stash. Like, now all of these guys have 10 to 20% of the supply, and you trust them not to dump any of their coins. Like,
yeah.
With Bitcoin, I don't expect it to happen, but, like, how are you going to get the United States government to say, it's like, yes, we have this person we don't even know who owns 5% of the supply to say Bitcoin is legal tender? Like, it's going to be a gap. And then you have on top of it, with the Chinese miners having 70% of the control for how transactions are processed. Like, they're not going to do it. It's just, it's unfeasible from that perspective with all these command and control obligations that are risky with it.
I think in the future the U.S. will come up with like a with a surveillance coin, like the opposite of a privacy coin. It just tracks everything versus like tries to avoid tracking anything. Because I think that would be of great interest to the United States government, and would be something they're capable of doing. And if they just tell everyone it's cryptocurrency, and tell them it's private, they'll believe it.
Oh yeah, that's what China's doing. I think like China said, "Oh, we're gonna make a cryptocurrency." I'm like, don't you realize with the Chinese government having all the servers and reporting all the information, they're tracking every last thing you were doing.
Yeah.
And that was a huge issue with Libra. Like Libra back in, what's it, 2018? No, 2019. It was like, oh yeah, let's make our own coin.
I haven't heard that Libra in a long time. Yeah.
Like, do you really want Facebook to be tracking every single one of your transactions? Like, they already know everything about you, okay? Like, that's why Google stopped collecting data or something. It's like, oh yeah, we've successfully spied on the entire U.S. population. Like, now Facebook's like, okay, what's the next step? Let's figure out how exactly they spend money.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
wow. Yeah, if you can track, like, how people are spending their dollars and moving their currency around, like, you have pretty good data on consumer spending, like a little deeper than just like sales patterns and stuff like that, consumer sentiment. Like, like, that's kind of insane to think about that level of data mining.
Oh, it's great. So I think of it this way, okay? Like, if everybody's honest, it'd be a great thing. Like, imagine like a statistical economist is like, we know exactly how much everybody is spending on what specific items, so we can perfectly target stimulus and whatnot to everyone and just have the most beautiful economy ever. Like, it's great from a data standpoint, like you said, but people are assholes, you know? Yeah. So that's too much power to have in one person's hands.
World's just not perfect.
Yeah, so.
All right, I think that's really all questions I had. But
yeah.
Now we're gonna see if there's anyone in the chat who wants to ask you any questions.
Okay,
It'll take a few seconds for the audio to go from the Zoom chat to the YouTube live stream, and then for them to hear it. So if anyone has any questions, ask them, and
we'll see if anybody has any questions.
Krish will answer them. Only Chad's questions. Any questions about general cryptocurrency? Any questions about Krish in general?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to pick my Discord chat.
Kareem's asking when anime chads are coming. When's the estimated release date on anime chads?
Okay, so we was talking with, Spidey. I don't know if you know him, but me and Walker were talking about partnering with the Fairy Tale server. So once we formalize that partnership, we kind of get that involved, or if we do partner, anime tabs will be coming, It's guaranteed. Like, I think if we get the partnership out, if there is no partnership, there still will be anime chats. So stay tuned. And if you got any ideas for anime chats, post it in the chat, because we will do those chats. So, yes.
Wow. I'm looking forward to that. I hope the partnership works out. That would be sick. That'd be sick.
I hope so too. I think it's huge problem with NFTs are just cash grabs, right? So if we can start making products that people want and working with an anime community and different communities and making things they want, that I think will elevate the only chats above other NFT brands. I think if we do this properly, we can be the only NFT company to make it out of this bubble, just by not trying to get rich quick and just working with other people.
Yeah, and I don't know for certain, but I'm assuming you're not burning through ridiculous amounts of cash with marketing and that any other kind of wasteful expenses like other NFT companies might be trying to do to build hype around their brand.
I spent lots of hours, but maybe only $100. So.
Heck yeah, that's the way to go. That's the way to go. It's more important to put in the hours than the dollars when it comes to promotion, in my opinion.
Oh, definitely. Bob, are there any anime chads you would want to see? I don't know, do you watch any anime?
I mean, Naruto.
Is that it?
Is Naruto even anime? I don't know. I watched the first season of Naruto. That's the only anime I've actually watched. But it was good. I liked it. I actually really liked it. I was sick. I was home from school and just binge watched it, and it was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, Naruto, I haven't watched. I watched only like one episode an hour. I haven't actually watched that much anime myself. Like, okay, I don't watch much TV to begin with, so like, now that I'm home, I've watched one episode of Clarkson's Farm. You know Jeremy Clarkson, Top Gear.
No, bro, I actually don't own a television, so I don't know.
I watched one episode of that. I watched one episode of Fairy Tale. I think that's about it. Like, I think Fairy Tale and Clarkson's Farm were like the only TV shows I've watched in like the past month. So like that's like 50% anime. So it's ironic, you know.
Wow, we
you
should
don't watch TV, but one anime episode makes it a majority.
in the future, we should do a partnership. Get a Bob Freeman Chad NFT going.
Oh, we're doing a Bob Freeman Chad NFT. I think we gotta wait for the right time, but you're definitely a Chad.
Hey,
yes.
2 thumbs up for that.
Okay, what would you want your special powers to be? You know, like, because each of the Chad has 2 special powers, right? So.
Special powers. Let's see. If let
me open up a chat. I'll give you an example. Okay?
I was thinking, like, what would I want my special powers to be? But that's not what the question is. What are my special powers?
Yeah, what are your special powers, Bob? This is an existential question right here.
Well, laser vision, of course. That's
okay,
why that's why I wear glasses. Is if it ever goes off, like, without me trying to make it go off, it doesn't hurt anyone. The glasses filter the beam. So
okay, laser vision.
I do have laser vision. And, oh yeah, and I'm really fast. Super speed. Very fast at running.
Speed and laser vision. Those are pretty good powers, not gonna lie. Like, I'll give you an example. So let's look at our zoomer. So I'm gonna be staring at my screen. So this is gonna be awkward, okay? Okay, so our first power is Twitter reply. The Chad Zoomer's Twitter reply is enough to silence you for 1 turn. And the second power is canceled. The Chad Zoomer cancels an opponent's card from the game. Dig it. So those are the Zoomer's 2 powers. So Bob Freeman's were laser vision and speed.
Laser vision blinds the opponent, so they can't see the rest of the game. They just keep their eyes closed.
Mm-hmm.
Super speed. It'd be the opponents put on a timer every turn, and they only have 5 seconds to make their decision to keep up.
Do you think there should be like a background power? Let's say, I think, you know, what's it called? Like let's say you have a Pokemon, right? A boost all other players by 10%. I'm thinking for the Bob Freeman Chad, like, it's a free information ability. You know, like all the other Chads are more educated about stock market.
They all gain points or strength or something.
All gain points.
It's like it's like the tide is just lifted.
Yeah, just everything becomes like more OP. Like, I think that's what the Bob Freeman thing was, like, free information aura. 20% more funds in all players' hands for new attack. 20% more mana. I think that will be the term in Magic the Gathering. More mana. The free information ability.
25% increase a year. With no risk.
Bob Freeman returns.
No risk.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's it. Any other superpowers, Bob Freeman?
None I could think of. Damn, I'm gonna when I go back and post this, I'm gonna clip this short so that way this proprietary information is not out to the public. 9 or 10 people have seen it, but I don't want to get too far out, you know.
Sure, you know, the CIA is gonna be going after you for that laser eyes ability. Like, you know, they're gonna take you to a lab, they're gonna like extract your eyes and shit.